So the Shadows of Change DLC just got a whole bunch of new units added to it to make it worth the price. But is it enough? Well, we're going to take a look at the units and what they can do, and you can decide for your damn self. Let's go! The first thing added for Kislev is a new generic lord, the Druzina. He's pretty solid in melee with heavy armor-piercing damage from that great axe weapon, but he also has a beefy ranged attack which is anti-large, so he's going to be an anti-large sniper. So overall, a solid damage dealer, and you can put him on a horse, so he can be a kind of skirmish sniper. For his abilities, he's got one that can boost damage output of himself and nearby missile units, another one that can replenish ammo of a unit, Heroic Killing Blow, that old ability, Tal's Judgment, which is a magic missile, and a good support ability which will give plus 60 armor and 20% missile resistance to an area around him, so really handy if you're trading missile fire with enemy units. Overall, a very nice new ranged generic lord. And then we have a new legendary hero, the Golden Knight, Nariska Lesa. She is a tanky lady with 100 armor and a silver shield, solid melee defense and melee attack, magical attacks, frostbite on there to reduce speed. No armor piercing though, so prefers the lighter targets. She has a guardian type ability which gives physical resistance and immunity to flanking for nearby lords and heroes. Another ability that boosts leadership and melee attack of herself and nearby friendlies, increasing as she takes damage. She also has Foe Seeker and Deadly Onslaught, and then in her item she has Totems of Ursus. This will silence nearby enemy units, which basically negates their magical weapons, so the physical resistance that she gives to nearby lords and heroes will stay active. And she has the Ursun's Claw ability, which will give her a big damage boost, and also the Frozen Imbuement, which will stop whatever she's attacking from moving. So overall, a hero with a lot of utility, a great bodyguard, more of a defensive hero, not a huge damage dealer, but still very nice. And then we have a new infantry for Kislev, the Kislevite Warriors. These are a tier 1 very cheap unit, low armor, low leadership, low everything pretty much. Although their melee defense is pretty decent, but they are of course an anti-large unit. And you might be thinking, hey, Kislev's already got a cheap anti-large unit in the Kossars, and they've got a ranged attack. What's the point of these motherfuckers? Well, these mustache warriors have armor-piercing damage, which the Kossars don't have, so that's always pretty nice to have in a cheap unit. They of course have charge defense and charge reflection, so they're just going to make Kislev's anti-large game that little bit better, especially as Kislev don't have any kind of elite anti-large melee infantry. It's mostly in their missiles and bears. This could be a pretty impactful unit for Kislev. They also have my new favorite weapon, Axe Fork. But who needs an axe fork when you've got a Frostworm, the new monster for Kislev? Not to be confused with the Norscan Frostworm, of course. I guess they're running out of names at this point. But this big serpenty icy dragon boy certainly packs a punch with solid stats all across the board. Armor-piercing damage, frostbite, big charge bonus. For the most part, you could argue that it's going to just be very similar to how you'd use the Elemental Bear as a big single entity. The biggest difference here, though, is going to be the speed. 75 is pretty damn quick for a big-ass monster, so that's more of its selling point, coupled up with the charge bonus. You want to try and charge it around a bit more than you would, say, the Bear, especially as it has that fear and terror. Going to be very dangerous in the late game, charging around, just routing everything. Otherwise, it just looks cool as heck. So that's the 4 new units. There's a few other nice additions for Kislev though. As the unit card reads, the Hag Witch Hag, because there is a new law of magic, the Law of Hags, of course. Here's all the spells in it. Pause the video if you want to have a proper look at the spells. I'll probably do another video going through all these properly, but for now, it's another really nice addition for Kislev, another exclusive magic law just for them as well, which will of course be part of the DLC because Hag Witches can only be accessed through the Shadows of Change DLC. There is a little bit of free LC coming though on the Kislev part as a new mount for Katerin. The Ice Court sled pulled by these lovely horses makes Katerin a hell of a lot more dangerous. She gets 95 speed, still got the magical attacks and frostbite, armor piercing, a bonus versus infantry, a missile attack which is also armor piercing, so she becomes a ranged chariot essentially. It's goddamn pretty heckin' nasty. But it doesn't end there for Katerin, as she's also got a Frostworm mount. So if you'd rather have her getting stuck into melee a bit more and destroying everything, well, you've got that option too now. Although, you know, the bear was always pretty good at that, but still, a very nice option, although I don't know how the hell she stays in this chair without sliding out. But there it is, everything for Kislev. First up for Cathay, a new hero, a hybrid weapons specialist, the Gatemaster. His melee stats aren't anything to write home about. He doesn't have armor-piercing damage on his melee weapon, but he does have it on his missile attack, which is very strong, has decent range. He also has that silver shield, so that'll protect him if he's trading with other missile units. Decent armor as well. For his unique abilities, he's got Bulwark of the Gate, which is a phased ability. 2 phases will give him more armor and more missile block chance the longer he's stood still. He also has Bastion's Defenders, which will allow him to give a unit melee defense and immunity to flanking. He also has Will of the Dragons and Tactician abilities too, and then for items, he's got Warrior Bane, which is an area hex, reducing the damage of nearby friendly enemies. What? Nearby friendly enemy? No. Reducing the damage of nearby enemy units, and he has Bolt Storm, which is a magic missile attack. He can be put on a horse. He also comes with PTSD, as you can tell by his face, looking like he's reminiscing about some traumatizing experiences. So overall, gives Cathay a nice ranged hero option. He's pretty cheap too. Your first new ranged Lord or hero option for Cathay. And we also have a second ranged hero option, this time a legendary hero, Tzeentch the Watcher. This boy is basically a terracotta sentinel with a ranged attack. He does have wings, but he can't fly, unfortunately. Alright melee stats, but a strong armor-piercing weapon attack. His ranged attack, though, is really where he shines. 350 range, 691 armor-piercing missile strength with a bonus versus large, making him more of a mobile artillery piece. For abilities, he has Master of the Stone Legions, which will give a physical resistance and leadership to nearby friendly units, but only if they're a construct like him, so Terracotta Sentinels, Jade Lions, all those kind of things. All the pottery, basically. And he also has Giant Leap, which is this attack. You can imagine the devastation this causes. And he has the Wind Bow item, which is a magic missile attack where he'll jump up in the air in a similar fashion, fire his bow, and it looks pretty damn fucking awesome. So that is Tzeentch the Watcher, a mobile artillery piece, anti-large focus, very dangerous. And looking less dangerous, the Great Moonbird. With his sparkly sparkles, he looks more like a pet. He's pretty low in the armor, so not the toughest of birds, but he is incredibly quick at 120 speed. Nice weapon strength, although not armor piercing, decent charge bonus. Fire and magical attacks, which is pretty nice. He has a fire resistance himself. Also has the Moon Flare ability. It's a vortex, will do damage to anything caught in it and will stop them from moving. So a pin ability. Fear and terror as well, coupled with the speed, that's going to be pretty dangerous for routing stuff. Overall, because of that blistering 120 speed, it's going to be great for harassing the enemy army, disrupting backlines, things like that, disrupting formations by pinning them or just pinning them in place so the missiles of Cathay have longer to blast things. Potentially a pretty versatile little bird. And lastly for Cathay, the Celestial Lion. Another flying single entity, not quite as quick this one, but he does have stronger weapon strength, armor-piercing damage, similar combat stats overall, a bit more armor, and he does have Fear and Terror, but he also has the Fearsome Roar ability, which is an area hex, reducing leadership by 8 and removing any immunity to psychology traits. So some big leadership penalties that he can inflict, potentially able to rout things off very easily. He also has Wounded Pride, which is a damage boost for himself if he drops below 50% health. So another great harassing unit for Cathay, a bit more of a damage dealer and incredibly dangerous in the late game with all those leadership penalties. For the Tzeentch units, you've got a generic lord, the Chaos Lord of Tzeentch. He's an absolute beefcake powerhouse, lots of armor, silver shield, magical attacks, big weapon strength, armor piercing, bonus versus large. The man is one-handing a two-handed halberd. So overall, just a big tanky fella, but also capable of putting out the damage. Especially as he has the Colossal Strike ability, that's a big damage boost for him, bonus versus large as well, immunity to psychology. He also has Change or Die, which is a 20% physical resistance and 16 leadership to himself and nearby friendly units. He also has Paragon of Change for the barrier boost. For his items, he has the Mirror of Knowledge, which will reveal and reduce the speed of any hidden units with Stalk or Unspotable or Hide in Forest. He'll find them all wherever they are on the map. Pretty powerful against certain factions for sure. And if all that wasn't enough, he also has Sentient Stormcloud, which is a magical bombardment spell. He can be mounted on a steed, chariot, or disc. So overall, a very powerful new generic lord for Tzeentch. There's also a new hero, this three-headed sex machine, the Exalted Hero of Tzeentch. Similarly to the previous unit, he's very strong in melee, armor-piercing, anti-large again, not quite as tough without a shield. For abilities, he has Assume Command, which is a +8 leadership buff for all nearby friendly units, but only if the lord is dead or routed. So he basically becomes your new lord. And then he has Meeting of the Minds. This is a melee attack and melee defense boost. Effect increases when spells are cast around him. And he also has the Colossal Strike ability like the previous lord. For his items, he has the Book of Secrets. This is an interesting one as it seems to cast 3 spells at the same time. The Fate of Yuna, a very powerful direct damage spell, Withering Heat, which reduces speed and gives a weakness to fire, and Enfeebling Foe, which reduces melee defense and melee attack of the target. So you'll put all of that on a single unit in one go. Pretty nasty. And lastly, he has the Golden Eye of Tzeentch, which will increase barrier regeneration and give missile resistance for 33 seconds. You can also have a Steed Chariot or Dismount. He's got it going on. Then we have the Centaurs of Tzeentch. These are pretty much your usual Centaur, just with magical attacks. Although they do have armor piercing, so they're more like the great weapon Centaurs. They do have the arcane charge ability like the Zangors, which will increase their damage output the more magic that is cast around them. So overall, they bring an armor piercing cavalry to the Tzeentch roster because they don't have one of those. They already have the Doom Knights as a Vanguard deployment unit, so that's not really adding anything. They are added to the Beastmen roster as well, so again, they're perhaps going to do more for that roster than they will for Tzeentch's. And then we have the Changebringers. These are basically flying flamers. They are god-awful in melee with 10 armor and 12 melee defense. I think my Nan has more than that. So obviously keep them away from melee, but it's their ranged attack where they're going to shine. Big missile strength, armor piercing, warp flame on there, fire and magical attacks. They'll be able to do a lot of damage with that extra mobility to get them around. Pretty short range though, so you will have to get quite close, which could be a danger with missiles. Still nice to have some flying flamers. But yeah, there you go. Some nice additions, I think. But what do you reckon? Is this enough to make you buy the Shadows of Change DLC with all the other stuff that was already in there? Let me know. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all the patrons who support this channel. I'll see you in the future.